Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ed Partyka. I'm coming to you from the Mozartsaal of the Konzerthaus in Vienna, Austria. Joining us this afternoon in New York time, Maria Schneider.
Hello.
And joining us, from morning in Los Angeles, Mr. John Clayton. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Hi there.
And you're both artists who have a very long association with the Vienna Concerthaus. You've both played here multiple times with your own orchestras. And during this Corona crisis, we thought it would be nice for some of your fans here in Vienna and in Austria, but also some of your fans worldwide, to maybe just keep them up to date about what you're doing right now, and maybe some of your future plans. And I'd like to sort of just start things out, and I'd like to sort of maybe see what you guys think about maybe some of the positive things that might be possible when we come out of the Corona crisis. I was having a talk recently with Bettina Ullmann. She's the manager of the Zurich Jazz Orchestra, and we were sort of talking to each other and saying, "Well, how's it going?" And she said, "Well, at least we don't, work with choirs." And if we look at all of the ensembles, during this Corona crisis, the only ensembles that have it worse off than a big band is a choir. Because of course a symphony orchestra, I'm very jealous of symphony orchestras. They can choose repertoire with fewer wind instruments. The string players, percussionists, things like that can wear masks. But of course, with a big band or a jazz orchestra, if we get rid of our wind instruments, well, we've basically got a jazz trio or quartet. So it sort of removes the essence of what we do. So let's start with you, Maria. Do you see any positive changes that are maybe going to come out of this Corona crisis when we get to sort of the other side?
Gosh, I was hoping you were going to start with John. Positive things. I would say the most positive thing that's going to come out of all of this is that I think that when we are all playing and doing live concerts again, people are going to appreciate live performance like never before, and musicians too. I've always felt it's so important to have the connection between the audience and my players, so much so that when we play concert halls and they do the lighting such that you can't see the audience at all, before we play, I always say, turn up the lights a little. My band plays much better when they see the audience. And so I think that is going to be magnified. Honestly, beyond that, I can't see a lot positive from this. I do think, obviously, there are people that have embraced this online platform to do performances in their homes and duos, and I do know some musicians that have very much grown their audience because they've fully embraced the technology. With a big band, that's a little tough. So I don't know. I want to hear what John has to say about this.
Wow. Well, earlier Maria and I were talking about her grandchild, and I also have a brand new grandchild who's a year, 13 months now. But had it not been for this situation, my life would have been doing what we do, traveling, touring, giving concerts, everything, all that normal stuff. And I would not have the relationship I have with my granddaughter right now. So that's so positive because they live 4 minutes away from me, and I love to cook, so I'm sort of the designated cook. So I see her pretty much every day. That's amazing. It wouldn't have happened. So there's that bit of a personal positive note. In terms of what happens in the future, I think now's our chance to reboot, just start certain things all over again. And we can be the drafters, the we can be the ones that really organize and create how things move forward. What were those things that we didn't like about performing, business wise, etc.? You name it. Now we can do that differently, and we are the architects for that if we want to. So I see that as kind of positive. I mean, for instance, uh, I haven't really shared this yet, so I'm still working on it. But here in Los Angeles, and I don't want to take up too much time with this, but here in Los Angeles, for instance, um, the studio scene is very big, as you know, Hollywood, movies, da da da. The musicians that perform in studios since the beginning of time are primarily white. And Los Angeles is such an amazing, beautiful melting pot of all these different cultures. Um, I would do a John Williams date or a Jerry Goldsmith date or some big movie call, and it would be a 70-piece orchestra, and I would be the only black person in the whole orchestra, or one of two or three. And I thought, man, this sucks. This is terrible. How that if there were not people of color that were capable of playing this kind of music, that would be one thing. But we're talking Los Angeles. We're not talking a small town in the Midwest someplace, right? The pool of musicians, capable musicians that they can choose from here is huge. Yet, for all the political reasons I won't get into, and other reasons which I have to say are steeped in um, in segregation, in all those things that we kind of don't want to talk about, and I won't go into right now. But now's the time for us to have those discussions. So that's an extended musical change that we can make. We can now have the contractors, the people that hire musicians, have new considerations, additional considerations to their former way of working, as well as the composers who can insist upon having a more diverse orchestra. That's just one thing. Schools, the same thing. We can just a lot of changes that we can make right now because we can hit reset. And so I'm kind of happy about those things. And yeah, and musically, I don't know. I'm curious to hear what Maria has been doing musically in this new environment, because that's been interesting.
But I was looking at or talking to some people that said, well, the life of a composer arranger, during the lockdowns and all this sort of stuff really hasn't changed. Most of the composers arrangers are still sitting alone in a room, and doing their work. But maybe this is the next question to follow up on the COVID situation. And I'll go back to you, Maria. Have you found the situation to be an inspiration, or has it been a very negative thing that's maybe impeded you in your creative work?
Well, my situation is maybe very unique in a way. So, just going to what John was first talking about, the whole idea of this being a positive thing for musicians who are always on the road, and I did a lot of traveling too and teaching. I know that there's a lot of musicians, even while they're freaked out about their own personal economy, at the same time, a lot of them have expressed that it's just an amazing thing to be home and not on this treadmill. And I think that a lot of musicians will be more conscious about the gigs that they take. I mean, for a while, everybody's going to just need everything. Everybody's just thirsty for income, but I do think that there are a lot of musicians that have said, wow, it's an amazing thing to have some time and for my family and everything. So I've heard that a lot. About me in this situation, so it was an unusual thing for me because I had an enormous recording project that I was just trying to finish right when this whole thing happened, and I lost all my touring gigs for touring a double album and everything. But as John knows, I do artist share. And along with artist share comes a whole lot of content and sharing of the process and making videos. And honestly, without COVID, I don't know how I would have gotten everything done. I have been, so for me, my life has been about that website and keeping that website strong and healthy so that I can make my money back because I'm not selling on the road and doing all these things that I did do. And so I've been doing a lot of editing of music and, that I'm selling on the site. So it's been, I would say, not such a creative year for me, but it's been a year of taking care of just tidying up things, and getting my website. For instance, when I sell my scores, I create videos with everything about how I conduct that music. So someday when I get hit by the proverbial beer truck or whatever, people will hopefully know how to play my music, and that's important to me. So I feel like all these things I'm doing are things maybe for the future down the road. So, but yeah, being so creative, I haven't been so creative. But and one thing I'll also say is, I always, after I do a big project and it's like a years long project, I'm always like a field that goes fallow. I always need the time just for space and to reabsorb life, to be outside, hiking, doing things to kind of refill the coffers. Musicians can't
Mm-hmm.
just keep pushing, 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 and churning out
Mm-hmm.
without having a chance to regenerate. And so I'm also, amidst all this stuff, I think creatively, hopefully regenerating for whatever comes next, which I have no idea what that is. I hope it's something good.
Yeah, Maria is so right that we need, and it's kind of, I don't know, life reflects composition, reflects music, because as a composer, as an artist, you are always embracing contrast. So something sounds really full and big because it's contrasted with something that's smaller, simple example. But uh, like Maria was saying, at some point, because you're so involved with all of these beautiful things musically, and you need you need to inhale. So I would do it probably on my way, a smaller scale than Maria has done it in the past. So I would always earmark um, about 3 weeks where I would just go in the woods and be by myself and um, take my score paper and a keyboard and my bass and just do whatever I want, eat healthy, wake up when I want, and that would usually be my shot in the arm that would help me. But now I don't have that because I'm not going anywhere, and uh, it's a different situation. It's a different environment now. So I went through personally. I went through what well, it was in March that my gig. I had a gig with an orchestra um, playing a work I'd written for them, and we had, I think, three or four concerts lined up. We did one, and they canceled all the rest, and I had to get on a plane and come home. And since then, like most musicians, that's so I went through a period of just going, okay, this is what it is. I'm just going to chill, accept it, leave it alone. I kind of morphed from that into what I call a lazy period, where it was like, okay, Clayton, enough chill. Now it's time to be productive, creative, and so I find myself um, being more accepting of the fact that I'm not as productive in this last year. I haven't been as productive as I maybe normally would have, but I'm cool with it. I'm like, that's fine, and then other things, life things happened that also took some time and attention. So, it's been a mix of things for me, but I have had some commissions here and there. Plus I'm doing, like many musicians are doing, giving workshops and things online, and the Zoom panels, and different things, couple of lessons, private lessons. So it's a new mixture, a new paradigm, which won't completely go away, but I can't wait. I can't wait to give a lesson in the same room with the student, where I can just walk over to him and her and say, okay, put your elbow here. I can't do
Yeah.
that. Instead, I'm like looking at the camera with my bass and going, can you see my right arm there? Okay, hang on, let me, it's like, I really hate that. And also, it's music is sound, and the sound that I'm having to hear and maybe comment on is coming out of these little 3-inch speakers, and with internet white noise. So I'm ready to move on from that.
Okay.
I have been doing some teaching. I went down to the University of Miami and uh, did participated in a concert with them and a lot of rehearsals with different groups and working with composers. And we just spread everybody out, and had plexiglass and everything. And I wrote something that they just did on a concert the other night. And now I'm going to New England Conservatory next week, and we're going to do the same thing. And then I'm going to Miami again. So somehow, some of these schools are managing, and and I think they appreciate it's. I mean, it's so hard to play well in an ensemble when you're tight together, but when you're spread so hard, it's really challenging. But I think for all of them, I mean, I've always felt that when we study music, we study to be healers in some kind of way. That when you're young, it's almost like a self healing. And then the older you get, sometimes it's not such a healing thing for yourself when you come through school, because suddenly you're so hypercritical. But then you give the music to others. And then at a certain point, you come around, and all of a sudden you come to the point where you say, yes, this is for others, but it's for me too. And I think that what I've enjoyed doing is just sitting, and because I don't perform, but I play piano all the time for myself. I don't want other people to hear it, but I love to do it for me, and playing together with, I told you, with Mark, who's learning to play bass. And yes, he's quite out of tune, but it's just lovely to play together. And so I've just been enjoying playing music for fun, and not having all the demands and everything. And I think that's not a waste of time, because if
Mhm.
you don't keep your own enthusiasm and joy and just love of the music purely for that moment of making sound just for yourself, then you don't have the stores of energy to put that proper energy into the music when you do put it out there. So I think it's it's okay to do nothing, even to go to the woods with the paper and not write a note. That's okay
Mhm.
too, even if that's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautifully said.
Yeah. Beautiful. And of course, both of you are talking a little bit about teaching and about passing things on. Maybe let's go back to when you were younger, or let's and think about maybe who were your idols, your mentors, the people that inspired you, that influenced you and stuff when you were at the beginning of your career. Then why don't we go over to you, John, and let you start with this, because I think this is also an important thing. Passing the torch, moving, passing things on, and seeing where you got your inspiration, and once again, maybe not even thinking about a teacher, but somebody who inspired you. It could have been a teacher, but maybe it wasn't. John?
It was, well, initially it was my high school director, and when he saw that I was really into learning this instrument and playing music, he said, "We have to get you a teacher." So he got me a classical teacher, and I started classical lessons. And around the same time, another high school friend of mine said, I heard a record you have to check out. It's so amazing." So I went with him. I'm from Venice, California. Went to the Venice Library, And there was a record of Oscar Peterson with Ray Brown on bass, Ed Thigpen on drums, and they played Billy Boy, you know. Ray Brown goes. I was like, wow, I had never heard music like that in my life. So at my next classical lesson, I said to the teacher, "Have you ever heard this guy named Ray Brown?" He said, "Sure, he's a friend of mine." And he took
Oh,
out a letter from Ray Brown that said, "Dear Mr. Siegel, would you please tell your students about a class I'm teaching at UCLA called Workshop in Jazz Bass?" That was my last classical lesson with that guy. I saved $65 and I enrolled in this course. And, along with the other students, I took this course that Ray Brown taught. But Ray Brown saw how hungry I was and how into it I was. So he let me follow him around afterwards. And he became my teacher, yes. But, people say, "Did you study with Ray Brown?" Sure, I did. But they don't understand more than study with him. I studied him. I studied his music. I studied how he dealt with situations in real life. It was just so Ray Brown would have to be at the top of the list. And of course, and it's funny you say that, Ed, because Ray Brown actually did say to me when I was always thanking him for helping me, I'd say, "You got to be tired of me always thanking you. You do so much for me." And he said, "No, I'm doing this for you because somebody did it for me, and you're going to do it for somebody else further down the line." So
mm.
that was like what
Beautiful.
I also learned from him. So yeah, he was top of the list, and then after that, or underneath that, there were so many other people: Henry Mancini, Count Basie, Monty Alexander. A lot of the people that I worked with were just sort of helping me. Jimmy Rolls, a lot of people. So that's my story.
Great. Maria?
Well, my story is so unique because I was from this little farm town in Minnesota, just in the middle of nowhere. Um, but the lessons, one lesson, okay, this is going to sound crazy, but I know it made an impact on me. Um, there was my nursery school teacher had us all sit outside in the dirt, and it was not beautiful. It was kind of gravel next to the driveway to this. We had nursery school in the church, and I went once a week. And she gave us each a string, and we had to sit in front of that our own string and just start noticing what happened within that string. And so we'd sit there, and all of a sudden somebody would say, "There's an ant," and then we'd all look, and it would be carrying something heavy, and it made me realize, I guess, I think, I don't know why that feels so powerful to me still, but I think it's that there's so much inspiration in just the mundane little things, and that there's so much to discover. There's a world in everything, and then my first musical moment for me was this woman moved to Wyndham from Chicago. She'd been a stride pianist, and when she moved to Wyndham, it was 1965, and she looked ancient to me. Um, but she'd been the stride pianist, but also a classical pianist. And she came to Wyndham because her husband and son, her husband was a jazz pianist, and her son, they both died of cancer within 1 month. And her
Oh,
only living family was a daughter who had married a chiropractor in Wyndham. So this woman that had this really quite amazing career, and the thing I really regret, I never asked her now, is what was it like being a woman jazz pianist in Chicago, a woman, because when I met her and she played like she had the Dorothy Donegan kind of thing, Tatum, she had
hmm.
strong hands, huge hands. She was a redhead, but she had the face of Dizzy Gillespie. She had an unbelievable appearance, and she was just a force and joyful. She would play and do runs and go off the end of the piano. She was so entertaining. And she taught me theory from the first lesson, and she taught me to love the American song, Great American Songbook. And we had to analyze everything we ever played. And early on, I was already playing little stride arrangements that I would make, out of tunes like Jada and, old tunes and things. And so, when I finally got to college, I started as theory. My classical composition teacher, he heard my music was so influenced by jazz that he said to me one day, why don't you just watch the big band rehearse and write something for it? And that was University of Minnesota. I just started watching, taking lessons with anybody who knew more than I did. I learned largely from other students because we were all listening to music, sharing things, sharing chords. I took some lessons with Manfredo Fest, the Brazilian pianist. He had played with Sergio Mendes. He was blind. It was really wonderful studying with him. His ears were insane. And, it was just, I don't know. I somehow found my way to doing what I do, being mentored by great people along the way. And just one last thing, the way you came to Ray Brown was similar for me and Gil Evans. I just moved to New York. I worked in a music copying office. I copied music for 8 years for a living. I worked the Xerox machines, and a composer came in, and we ended up, he was leaving, I was getting lunch, and so was he. We got lunch together, and he started asking me about my favorite writers, and I started talking about Gil. And he called me that night, and he said, well, I didn't tell you today, but Gil is my best friend, and he needs somebody to work for him and do some things, and he wants to meet you. And he said, I gave him a call. And it's just like, so sometimes it's like, when you have, I think there is something, and I thought of it when John said that when you have this love and enthusiasm, when something just explodes, it gives you just a sonic boom of like, oh, what is that? I love that, that I believe that sonic boom is heard throughout the universe, and sometimes it brings the right thing back to you. I don't know, because it was just
Yeah.
bizarre how that happened. And your story is quite bizarre too, I must say.
Mhm. Exactly. And also, that's amazing. Yes, it is. It is like a sonic boom. It's like an atomic bomb going off, and people give energy, and you absorb other people's energies, even if you don't understand what that energy is saying. You feel it, and when your energy connects with like energies or people that are open to it, uh, and can do something with it, then something happens. I mean, we're all musicians. We know about that because we play music for people. And it's, like Maria was saying, having the light up a little bit allows you to also visually connect with the people whose energies you're receiving, and that exchange is so important. So I totally agree. It's a sonic boom going off. I get it now. We get it when if you're lucky enough to have a student that is hungry for something that you are involved in on the same plane with, then there's nothing that feels better. I happen to be, knock on wood, working with a student now. I don't have a lot of students, just two or three, but this one student, he's so hungry and he so loves everything we do, and all it ends up doing is becomes this energy exchange, which totally pumps me up and sparks my spark plug. So anyway, yeah, exactly what Maria is saying. I get it.
Yeah, no, excellent. Now, talking about the sonic boom or this inspiration, these sorts of things, I'd like to maybe move the discussion a little bit back towards big band, because there are a lot of big band fans who are watching this. So, what was like the first big band recording you heard, or a live big band performance that also grabbed you? That was your sonic boom for writing for jazz orchestra, for a big band, or that sort of stuff. Maria, would you like to jump in first?
Well, oh gosh, recordings. I mean,
Or
I was listening to all sorts of things and loving them so much, everything from Ellington to Gil Evans and Bob Brookmeyer and all sorts of things. But I would say a sonic boom moment for me, because I always felt a little bit like this is music that lives a little in a bubble, or it's in the past and it's not a viable thing that I can do. It's something that others did. It's a time gone by. I always felt that about Mrs. Butler. It's like, if only I was born when Mrs. Butler was born. So, but I had a moment in Minneapolis at Orchestra Hall. It's a classical concert hall, and and Toshiko Akiyoshi's band came, her LA band. And somebody said, "Oh, she's playing. Would you like to go here?" And I did. And I love the concert. But what like totally impacted me was that she was playing in a classical concert hall with a big band traveling from LA. And I remember saying to this kid that played in the big band that had given me some lessons, because he wrote more arrangements than I did. I'd written 0 and he'd probably written 10, so that made him, the person I looked up to. And I said, "Do you think I could do that?" And he said, "Sure, why not?" And that's all I needed. If he had said, "Oh, come on, never," I probably would have thought never. And I think sometimes the people that change our lives are just the people that just give us that one kernel of encouragement, And it was just the sure, why not? And then I thought, wow, I can do that. That's something you can do in this life. And so that was a big moment for me, because my exposure was so, it wasn't what yours was coming up in LA, let's just say. And, your teacher knows Ray Brown, it's a whole other level of you went right to it. Mine was like a very circuitous route.
Gosh, it's funny because Ray Brown kind of did what that person did for you. He would often say to me, till the day he died, actually, he'd say to me, "Here's what you got to do." So he was always giving me sort of not only instruction but permission. No question that wasn't, "Here's something I hope you can do," or "Maybe you're qualified to do." You didn't question. I didn't question. I just did it. But the recordings, excuse me, that I really think back on in the beginning, I don't know if there definitely was not one recording, but there were a handful of recordings that really opened my eyes. And in the high school band that I played in, we were playing Norwegian Wood. I think that's a Holman arrangement,
Right, Holmes
for
and
Buddy
Rich,
Rich.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one that we were playing, and I got to hear the record as well. That was kind of an eye opener because, there's the record and we're doing it too. That was kind of cool. But then soon after that, I started hearing other records, and of Basie, of Woody, Duke, kind of the important names in that music early on. And then I remember at some point kind of very quietly thinking to myself, I don't know what all this excitement is about this Duke Ellington guy, The records I hear, it's like they're sloppy and they're out of tune. And so I didn't get it. And then thank God I did eventually get it, because he ended up being, having the most influence on my music of anybody. But the record that really made me listen even further was Duke Ellington's 70th birthday concert album. It was a double album. And after I heard Rockin' in Rhythm, I just devoured the rest of that record. And then that got me into really exploring and discovering more Duke. But I would say that record really changed my life. And also the record that Duke happened to do with Basie The two bands together, that record changed my life. Miles's works with Gil Evans totally blew my head open. And then it just kept going, snowballing after that. But those are some of the highlights that stick out in my mind in the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Very nice. Now, the instrumentation of the big band or jazz orchestra has been about the same, more or less, for almost 100 years. Why has this instrumentation endured, and why is it so successful artistically? I mean, for a while it was very, it was successful as popular music, but now it's just so successful as a body, basically a chamber orchestra. Why has it been so successful over these decades, or this 100 years, this century, Maria?
Let's go with John first.
Okay, let's go.
I want to hear what you
Because,
say first. I'm not sure about that.
I don't know. I would have to look back at the evolution of it to have a feeling for rather than an answer. I think it's more of an understanding and a feeling. So think about our music, its beginnings as a street march. Think about the early era in New Orleans, for instance, the birth of this music and the instrumentation. It was an outdoors music that was marched to and slash danced to. When it finally moved inside, then they replaced the tuba, which you could march with the bass. And you look at all the how it sort of unraveled and can continue to grow. You didn't have to have a drum line that could be played by one person who enter the drum trap kit, as they used to call it, the drum set. Enter piano, which is not so. If you understand that, then you can kind of see how it sort of evolved and just kept stacking on top. But there were other influences. Look at the European Western music influence on all kinds of music, but definitely on jazz. So you've got composers that are influenced by that music, that are combining the beauty of music, period, whether it's jazz or any style, is that it takes from other sources and blends it with whatever it is that their music is about. So anyway, you kind of fast forward from all of that. The next thing you know, you're in the big band era, where you've got these ensembles. As a result of all of that evolution, you've got these ensembles that are able to provide the dance music, the improvisation platform of the time, of the era. And personally, I think that that the important things in art, they don't go away. I think that fad is fade without the E, right? So something is really faddish. If it has any kind of real substantial artistic value, it's not going to fade. It's going to be around. And you look at orchestras, there's that parallel. How did they start? If you look at the Baroque period versus the classical period versus and just keep moving on, the instrumentation of an impressionistic period orchestra versus a Baroque orchestra, it's a huge difference because more instruments were invented, more composers were thrilled by the palette that they could expand, and on and on and on. So there's that parallel. I kind of see that in jazz too, in big band too. So Maria's band might have some extra instruments or people in her woodwind section, for instance, to double on different instruments to allow her to get different sounds. Same with me, My brother used to play oboe and English horn, so that was, oh, cool. Really, bring that to the next rehearsal. That was just sort of. So those are just some thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really good thoughts. I'm really glad you went first because I would have never come up with that. And it's really interesting. I honestly never thought of it all that way. I mean, just a big band is just such a joyous thing to listen to, the brass, and then the saxes add the warmth, and you have all the different improvisational instruments, and it is just a magical instrumentation. And certainly, for me, I was so inspired by Gil Evans and, other things. And I sometimes did want the odder instrumentation. But then what I discovered is just from a practical standpoint, there are big bands everywhere. In Europe, there's, in Germany has several, Sweden has just loads of big bands. There's every country and every university has a big band. And, so when I started, doing this, I realized, oh my goodness, because I always thought, okay, how am I going to make a living with a big band? How am I going to survive? It's so expensive. It's completely impractical. And I'm going to have to do something else to make money, and I'd worked at a truck stop. So I was like, okay, I can waitress. I can always do that. There's always something. But then in the end, it turned out there are so many big bands that actually it's quite practical to write for big band because of how many there are all over the world. And so what I've tried to do with the band is have it be a standard instrumentation pretty much, except I added accordion now. And I have the woodwind doubles, but I try to, I orchestrate a little bit differently with it. You having one person from one section with another, more typical playing, everybody's playing as a section, and there's a security for all the players that they feel everybody go like this and they come in my band, it's like, wait, you're not playing? Oh my God, am I by myself? Am I wrong? It's like my music is full of that. It makes everybody very insecure because it's like, I'm alone. Who am I with? Oh my gosh, am I out of tune? It's really challenging to play. But yeah, so I've kind of taken apart, probably in a not very good way, what a big band does best, so I do what it doesn't do easily, but I've had players that have played it for long enough, they've figured out how to do it.
You do it in a very perfect way, Maria.
Oh, well, thank you. In my own way, anyway. Yeah.
No, but that's it's interesting because, of course, being a brass player who's played in a lot of big bands, yes. I mean, especially brass players in big bands. I mean, we are herd creatures. I mean, we need to be part of the herd. And if you are sort of alone, it just creates this uncertainty and this nervous energy. But of course, you can use that to your advantage. Of course.
Yeah.
Now,
that's how I assert my power. You make everybody insecure, and now I'm the alpha dog.
Terrific.
It's all intentional. It was a plan.
Now, talking about both of your orchestras and bringing the theme, the topic back to the concert house, the Konzerthaus here in Vienna, because you've both performed here many times with your orchestras. Maria, how many times have you played here in the past? I
knew you were going to ask that, and I don't know, but it's quite a lot because I've worked with other groups there. I've also worked with the Danish band, the Brussels Jazz Orchestra, and now my band quite a few times. So I wish I knew, but it's quite a few times. But probably the most notable for me was when we did a commission for the I was commissioned for the Peter Sellers Mozart Festival. And it's like, wait a minute. You're having my big band play for the Mozart Festival? Yeah, and we don't want a note of Mozart. It's like, whoa. So I ended up writing a piece about migration, cerulean skies for that concert. And that's a piece that to this day I still really love to play. And so I feel very grateful to the Konzerthaus and that Mozart Festival.
Okay, wow. Do you remember what year that was?
That would have been about 2006, I believe,
Okay,
maybe 5 or 6. 2006, probably.
okay, great. And John, do you remember the first time you played with your band, with your Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra here?
You're asking the difficult questions now. No,
Okay, but
I don't
do you remember
remember
the
the
last
first.
time you played here?
Yes,
November
it was.
11th, 2018.
Oh my gosh.
Or was it November? It might have been November 9th, I'm not sure. But I was lucky enough to be in the audience, so at least that one I
Oh,
remember.
no
It
kidding.
was a great
Yeah.
concert, by the way. So,
Thank you. Wow.
yeah, and of course the audiences here in Vienna are very much looking forward to when both of you come back with your orchestras. Now, rumor has it, and the thing is we have to be a little careful here because I'm under strict instructions to not give away any details, because there's going to be a press conference, I think in May, on the 25th of May, when the subscription series for next season is going to be being brought to the public. And, but, I think we can start some rumors. Rumor has it that you're both maybe going to be performing here during the next season with your orchestras. Would you care to confirm or deny these rumors, or we can leave it a mystery as well? Maria?
Well, it seems to be true, and yeah, no, I'm very excited to come back, and yeah, we're planning a tour of Europe, and it will be our first time really playing after all of this crisis, and I just pray to God everything goes okay and that we can really do this. I mean, it's going to be quite something because the band will be playing after just been I I mean we may have one concert between now and then. I don't know. We'll have to rehearse. We might be a little rusty, but the brass players are going to have to push those chops a little because my music is kind of a blow. But yeah, it's something we're all really looking forward to, and yeah, I venture to say I think there's going to be some tears, just over making music
Sure.
again.
Yeah. Yeah. Tears of joy.
And tears of joy and with a lot of loss behind it.
Yeah.
You, I know, John, your brother. That's just
Mhm.
moving ahead with that's got to be difficult. And in my band too, Frank Kimbrough, my pianist of
Oh yeah.
27 years, died suddenly. That will be the beginning of moving ahead in some kind of different way, and musically
Hmm.
it's painful. It's
Yeah.
painful,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yep. So that also affects me, and probably you too, Maria, because we don't write for instruments. We write for people. We write for their
Mhm.
voices, and to have a voice like my brother's or anybody's change in the band, it means that I now have to write differently, which I'll do. I'm happy to do. I'm happy to always write however I need to write for those people. But of course, we'll miss my brother's voice, and move forward. That's what needs to happen. That's what he would want us to do. So we're just kind of coming to grips with all that. But it's we're human beings. We're musicians. We figure it out.
Yeah, it's hard because you don't want somebody coming in feeling like, oh, I've got to fill those shoes and try to be that. You
Right.
want somebody else to be able to come in as an artist and that we embrace them. And it's a very confusing thing to feel the loss, but then to
Mm,
want to embrace the change for everybody's sake. And it's disorienting and it's painful and but
exactly.
it has to, I know you know what
Yeah.
that's like. You're experiencing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, my brother's loss, of course, is big, but we've had loss through the band through our band, basically the rule is, once you're in the band, we don't fire you. The only way you can leave is if you quit or die. And so through the years,
Wow.
through the years, that means that, you know, I've had to retire a, a bunch of the people, because when they die, you know, it's it they've already kind of put their stamp on that piece that I originally wrote for them. So somebody else coming in and doing it, it can still be beautiful, and we'll still enjoy playing it, and it'll be a different take on it and outlook, etc. But usually, it just kind of feels like, no, we can move on. I'll write something else. It's kind of the way
Hmm.
it happens in our band. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so very much. I think this is
You're
a
welcome.
nice sort of time to bring an end to this very interesting conversation. And thank you very much, Maria Schneider joining us from New York, John Clayton joining us from LA, Los Angeles. The fans of the Konzerthaus here in Vienna are very much looking forward to hearing both of your orchestras, maybe, in the next season. And obviously, just stay tuned to all of the media channels of the Konzerthaus to find out whether Maria and John are going to be performing here with their orchestras or not. No, thank you so very much. It's been great talking with you and listening to your wonderful stories and your wonderful wisdom. Thank you so very much.
And great to
Thank
see
you.
you, Ed.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Ed. Great to see you, Maria.
Yeah. Okay.
You too,
Take care.
John.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.